For thousands of years, the Trojan War has captured the imagination of historians, poets, and ordinary people alike. It's a tale of epic heroism, tragic love, and divine interference. But beyond the poetry of Homer and the stories of the gods lies a deeper question: was there ever a real war fought for Troy? Is Helen of Troy a historical figure or a symbol crafted by ancient minds to embody beauty and destruction? What about Achilles, Hector, and Odysseus? Were they actual warriors or mythological heroes made immortal by storytelling? In this documentary, we will dive deep into the origins of the legend, explore ancient texts, and examine the archaeological clues. We'll look at what the ancient Greeks believed and what modern historians have discovered from the ruins of the past. Did a massive war really break out over a woman? Or was that just a romantic cover for political ambitions and trade disputes? Why has this war, real or not, lasted so long in our collective memory, retold in books, films, and even video games? The lines between fact and fiction blur in the story of Troy. Our mission is to separate truth from legend. We begin with Homer, whose epic poems the Iliad and the Odyssey are the foundation of the Trojan War narrative. Though written centuries after the supposed war, Homer's works remain the most influential source of the Trojan tale. But Homer never claimed to write history. His focus was drama, emotion, and the divine, not historical accuracy. So what else do we have to go on? Archaeology, Mycenaean records, Hittite archives, and layers of burned earth in modern-day Turkey. In the late 19th century, a German archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann claimed to have discovered the ancient city of Troy. His methods were controversial, often destructive, but his discoveries changed the conversation forever. Deep in the hills of Hisarlik, Schliemann uncovered ruins that matched Homer's descriptions in uncanny detail. 9 layers of cities were found, one of them violently destroyed by fire and war. Was this the real Troy? It may have been, but scholars debate which layer, if any, aligns with the legendary war. With each generation of archaeologists and historians adding new clues, the debate continues to this day. From ancient letters between kings to pottery shards and city walls, the evidence is fragmented but compelling. Some believe Troy was a powerful trade hub, strategically placed between east and west, making it a frequent target of conflict. This would explain why many city layers show signs of siege and destruction, not just once but several times. If the war was real, it might have been about economics and power, not love and beauty. Mythology has its own truth, reflecting the fears and longing for glory, dreams, and values of the people who told it. Still, the world around the Aegean Sea was thriving with trade, culture, and rivalry. 2 rising powers, Mycenae in Greece and the city of Troy, stood at the center. By exploring both the legend and the history, we can come closer to understanding what really happened. Ancestors of the classical Greeks ruled from palaces like Mycenae. There were alliances, betrayals, and disputes over shipping lanes and territory. Pylos. Each palace was its own center of power, but they were united by language and religion. Cities rose and fell based on resources, armies, and sea access. And there were fierce warriors and ambitious traders. The Trojan War is more than a story. It's a mirror into the ancient world, reflecting its hopes, violence. A chain reaction of wars, migrations, and collapses would soon shake the region. Recorded inventories and taxes, but left no grand epics or legends of their own. Their world was practical and power-driven. Fortified walls and complex defenses suggest it was built for war as much as peace. Near the Dardanelles Strait stood Troy, wealthy, fortified, and perfectly placed to control trade routes between Asia and Europe. And in the myths, a fateful apple was about to be thrown. They were not just bystanders, they were characters in the coming drama. It begins with tension, with choices, with motives hidden beneath the surface. As we peel back the layers of myth and uncover the forgotten truths beneath. So join us, a powerful kingdom that ruled much of Anatolia and rivaled Egypt in influence. This is the journey into the heart of the greatest war story ever told, where fact and fable collide. And it all begins here with one question: what really happened in the Trojan War? Long before the war, the Mycenaeans, they wrote in Linear B script across the sea. Whoever controlled that region controlled access to the Black Sea and all the riches that came through it. Troy's location was no accident. Some believe Troy was an ally of the Hittite Empire. The Hittite archives mention a city called Wailusa, possibly ancient Trojan kings named possibly linked to the name Alexandros or Paris. Trade, diplomacy, and tension defined the region. This was a time before clear borders. Power shifted constantly. In Mycenaean Greece, water kings ruled small kingdoms. They worshipped gods like Zeus, Hera, Athena, and Poseidon deities, who would later become key players in the Trojan War myth. Despite internal rivalries, Mycenaean kings occasionally formed coalitions, especially when a common enemy threatened trade or pride. Troy, too, had enemies. Its wealth made it a target. Excavations at Hisarlik reveal the city destroyed and rebuilt multiple times, proof of conflict, even before the legendary war. By 1200 BC, tensions across the Aegean had reached a boiling point. This era known today as the Late Bronze Age collapse, or the fall of great cities, the end of kingdoms, and the rise of new powers. In this fragile world, a spark, real or imagined, was enough to start a war that would be remembered for thousands of years. The stage was set. Mycenaean warlords looked east. Troy stood proud, but vulnerable. The gods of Olympus, according to legend, watched with interest. Before the war, there was already a storm of envy, greed, ambition, and pride. All it needed was a single trigger to explode. Understanding the political landscape of 1200 BC helps us see the Trojan War not just as myth, but as part of a real-world struggle. As we continue, we'll explore the legendary cause of this war, the judgment of Paris, and the abduction that shook the ancient world. But first, remember this: history does not begin with battle, and the world before Troy's fall was already trembling. In legend, the Trojan War began not with a sword, but with a golden apple thrown at a wedding by a jealous goddess, Eris, the goddess of discord. The apple was inscribed to the fairest. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all claimed it. None would back down. To settle the dispute, Zeus appointed Paris, prince of Troy, to judge who among them was most beautiful. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera promised power, Athena promised wisdom and victory. Aphrodite offered love, the love of the most beautiful woman on earth. Paris chose Aphrodite. In return, she promised him Helen, of Sparta, already married to King Menelaus. Paris journeyed to Sparta, welcomed as a guest. But according to legend, he left with Helen, willingly or by force. The truth, if it existed, is lost in time. This actual or mythical became the spark that ignited the war. A king's wife taken by a foreign prince. Honor insulted. Revenge demanded. Some sources say Helen fell in love with Paris. Others say she was kidnapped. Old oaths were invoked, promises made long ago to defend Helen's marriage. Furious, he turned to his brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, and demanded war. Menelaus returned to find his queen gone. Agamemnon summoned the kings and warriors of Greece. A coalition of warlords and ships formed, bound for Troy. His children were among the warriors. The war would be both divine and human. The greatest warriors answered the call: Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, Diomedes. But mythology doesn't ignore the gods. They took sides. Hera and Athena, spurned by Paris, joined the Greeks. Aphrodite stood with Troy. Zeus watched from above, careful not to favor one side too openly. This divine involvement gave the story weight. Fate, destiny, and cosmic justice played roles in every decision. Even kings bowed to omens, winds, and rituals before war. Yet behind the myth lies a possible political truth. The abduction may have symbolized a breach of alliance or a pretext for invasion. In ancient diplomacy, marriage often sealed treaties. If Helen represented a political bond, her loss was more than personal, it was national. To the Mycenaean kings, this was more than insult. It was opportunity, a reason to launch a campaign east and expand influence. Whether love, lust, or politics drove the Greeks, the outcome was the same. War was declared, and an armada was prepared. The ships gathered at Aulis, thousands of warriors, provisions, weapons, months of preparation before sailing to Troy. Their walls, massive and towering, were nearly impenetrable. Beside him were his sons, brave Hector, reckless Paris, and many others ready to defend their home. But even the gods delayed them. Artemis, angered by Agamemnon, demanded a sacrifice. In some tales, he offered his own daughter, Iphigenia. From here, they launched raids and blockades. This tragic moment shows the depth of desperation and belief. Eventually, the winds shifted. The fleet sailed. The war to reclaim Helen or seize Troy had begun. But was it ever about a woman? Or had Helen become the symbol of a deeper ambition, control, pride, and the spoils of conquest? As we move forward, we explore the long siege, the battles, and the heroes whose names would echo for millennia. Hector, noble and strategic, became their greatest champion. The spark had been lit. Now came the fire, swift, nearly invincible, and driven by personal glory. The Greek fleet landed on the shores of Troy, beginning a war that would last not months, but a full decade of brutal, exhausting siege unlike any other in ancient memory. The fields around Troy were littered with bones and broken armor. Year after year, new warriors arrived. Others died. Time wore down even the strongest wills. The Trojans, expecting an attack, had already fortified their city. At times, both sides suffered more from disease than from the sword. At the heart of Troy stood King Priam, wise and aged. Greek forces attacked Trojan allies and villages, weakening support for the city. The Greeks built a camp near the shore. It became a second city of tents, ships, and warriors. The early years were filled with skirmishes, quick attacks, stolen supplies, ambushes, and deadly duels. Neither side could gain a lasting advantage. Troy was well defended, and the Greeks struggled to break through its outer walls. Others, as an innocent caught in a divine war. Her presence symbolized both desire and doom. His bond with Achilles would become central to the story's most tragic moment. Helen lived as a queen in the enemy city. Achilles would withdraw from battle, and everything would change. Achilles, the Greeks' mightiest warrior, became the terror of the battlefield. But the Greeks were not a unified force. Rivalries and pride simmered beneath the surface. Command was shared, alliances strained. Agamemnon's arrogance often clashed with Achilles' pride, tensions that would boil over and shape the war's fate. The Trojans, though outnumbered, fought fiercely. The gods watched and interfered. Poseidon stirred the seas. Apollo defended Troy. Athena schemed for the Greeks. Each major battle had both divine and human consequences, destiny and decision, intertwined in blood. The war claimed countless lives, nobles, soldiers, and civilians alike. Siege warfare meant starvation and plague. Still, the Greeks held their siege. Raids extended into surrounding regions. Odysseus, cunning and ruthless, led many of these missions, burning towns, gathering intelligence, and sowing fear. Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, fought bravely. Inside Troy, morale fluctuated. Some wanted peace, others revenge. Some Trojans viewed her as cursed. Attempts at negotiation failed. Embassies were sent, offers were made, but no one could swallow their pride. The war ground on either side able to land a killing blow, both too proud or bound by fate to retreat. Each year hardened the warriors. Innocence faded. The cause became less clear. Only honor and vengeance remained. Songs were sung of the dead, but no end was in sight. The siege had become a way of life, a generation raised in war. Then came the turning point, not by brute force, but by betrayal, rage, and tragedy. The war's greatest drama was about to unfold. The war dragged on, but Achilles, the Greeks' strongest warrior, suddenly withdrew from battle, furious at Agamemnon's insult. Agamemnon had taken Briseis, a woman Achilles loved, claiming her as a prize of war. This shattered Achilles' pride. Without Achilles, the Greeks faltered, morale dropped. Trojan forces pushed forward, sensing an opportunity. Hector led the Trojan counterattacks, bold and relentless. He became the hope of Troy, the shield of the city. The Greeks were driven back toward their ships. Fires threatened the fleet. Panic spread among their ranks. Disperacy, Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, begged to wear Achilles' armor and lead the Myrmidons into battle. Achilles agreed, but warned him not to go too far. Patroclus disobeyed. In the heat of war, he chased the Trojans to the gates of Troy. There, Hector met him. Thinking it was Achilles, Hector struck him down, killing him and taking the armor. The death of Patroclus broke Achilles. Grief turned into rage. His sorrow became a storm of vengeance. He returned to battle like a god of war. His fury was unmatched. Greek morale soared. The tide of war turned once more. Achilles didn't just kill him as occurred. River gods complained of the blood choking their streams. Even Zeus took notice. Then came the most iconic duel of the war, Achilles versus Hector. the hero of Troy against the fury of Greece. Hector, knowing death was near, still faced Achilles with courage. Their battle was swift, brutal, and unforgettable. Achilles killed Hector, tied his body to his chariot, and dragged it around the walls of Troy in a display of wrath and dishonor. The people of Troy watched in horror. Priam wept for his son. Even the gods were shaken by Achilles' cruelty. Eventually, Priam, guided by the gods, sneaked into the Greek camp. He knelt before Achilles, begging for his son's body. Achilles, moved by the king's grief, returned Hector's body for proper burial. It was one of the few moments of mercy in the war. This act showed that even in bloodshed, humanity could still flicker within hardened hearts. But the war was far from over. Achilles' fate, too, was sealed. A prophecy had foretold that he would die young if he joined the war. His end came soon after, struck in the heel by an arrow, said to be guided by Apollo and shot by Paris. Achilles' death devastated the Greeks. He had been their greatest weapon. But even legends bleed. The war now became a cycle of revenge, no longer about Helen, but about pride, loss, and the thirst to end it all. Troy remained standing, but barely. Its strength weakened, its heroes fallen, its fate nearing. And yet, one final plan, one last deception would decide everything. After 10 brutal years, neither the Greeks nor the Trojans could endure much longer. But brute force had failed. A new strategy was needed. It was Odysseus, clever, cunning, and patient, who devised the plan that would end the war forever. He proposed building a giant wooden horse, hollow inside, to hide a select group of warriors. The Greeks pretended to surrender. They burned their tents, boarded their ships, and sailed out of sight, leaving only the horse on the beach. Alone, Greek Sinan remained behind to sell the lie. He told the Trojans it was a gift to Athena to ensure safe passage home. The Trojans debated. Some feared a trick. Cassandra, the cursed prophetess, warned them not to trust it, but no one listened. Glaucon, a Trojan priest, echoed her warning. Beware Greeks bearing gifts. But he and his sons were killed by sea serpents, interpreted as a sign. Convinced by fate, or perhaps arrogance, the Trojans brought the wooden horse inside their city walls as a trophy of victory. That night, they celebrated wildly. After 10 years of war, they believed it was finally over. Music filled the streets, wine flowed, guards slept. But inside the horse, Greek warriors waited in silence, among them Odysseus, Menelaus, and others, thirsty for vengeance. In the dark of night, the hidden soldiers climbed down. They opened the city gates for the Greek army, which had returned silently under cover of darkness. Troy was taken completely by surprise. Its people awoke to fire, screams, and the clash of swords. There was no time to organize a defense. The Greeks unleashed their fury. Houses burned, temples fell, men were killed, women and children were taken as slaves. King Priam was slaughtered at the altar. Paris died in battle. The royal family was shattered. The dream of Troy ended in ash. Helen was found and taken back by men. Others say she used her beauty to escape punishment. The gods, once so involved, now turned their faces away. Even they could not stop the horrors unleashed that night. The once great city was reduced to rubble, its riches stolen, its legacy sealed in legend and smoke. Odysseus' plan had worked, but at a terrible cost, not just for Troy, but for the Greeks as well, who would suffer on their return home. The fall of Troy marked the end of an era. The Bronze Age world was already collapsing. This war was its final chapter. Archaeology shows that a great city at Hisarlik was burned around 1200 BC. Whether this was the Troy of legend is still debated, but the story endures not just because of its violence, but because of its deep themes, pride, deception, and the cost of war. The Trojan horse remains history's greatest metaphor for betrayal hidden behind beauty, and Troy's fall, whether real or imagined, still speaks to us across time. As we move forward, we'll explore what happened after Troy burned and how the war haunted those who survived. The war was over, but for the Greeks, victory brought no peace. Many of the heroes who survived Troy would face long, tragic journeys home. The gods, angered by the brutality and desecration of Troy's temples, cursed the victors with storms, shipwrecks, and madness. Agamemnon, the commander of the Greeks, returned to Mycenae but found betrayal waiting. His wife Clytemnestra murdered him in his own palace. She had never forgiven him for sacrificing their daughter, Iphigenia, to appease the gods before the war. Menelaus and Helen also returned to Sparta, but their reunion was shadowed by suspicion and silence. Could trust ever be restored? Ajax the Lesser, who desecrated a temple, was destroyed by a shipwreck, an act of divine vengeance for his crimes in Troy. Nestor returned safely, but aged and broken. Many heroes were not so lucky. Some vanished without a trace, others never made it home. None suffered more than Odysseus. His journey, filled with monsters, witches, and gods, would take 10 more years. Odysseus' trials became legend: the Cyclops, Circe, and the wrath of Poseidon, who never forgave him. By the time he returned to Ithaca, he was a ghost of his former self. His kingdom barely remembered him. His wife, Penelope, nearly remarried. The war had shaped them, but also cursed them. Glory had come at a cost. Home was no longer the same. For the sons of Troy, exile or death was the only fate. Aeneas, a noble Trojan, fled the ruins with his father and son. According to Roman myth, Aeneas wandered the Mediterranean, eventually found in the bloodline that would become Rome. The legacy of Troy did not die, it transformed, traveling west through myth and empire. Even in destruction, Troy's story inspired civilizations to come. Rome claimed Trojan ancestry. Europe embraced the myth as cultural foundation. The women of Troy suffered gravely. Hecuba, Andromache, and others were enslaved, dragged into Greek households as trophies of war. Troy's fall was not a clean ending, but the beginning of generational trauma. Its ruins echoed through centuries of storytelling. The Greeks left victorious, but changed forever. Their songs told of fame, but their eyes carried pain. The war exposed the emptiness of conquest, the cost of honor, the cruelty of gods and men. In mythology, mortals are toys of fate. In history, they are victims of pride and politics. The line between the two had blurred completely. The gods faded into memory, but the war remained etched in stone, in poem, in blood. What began with a golden apple ended in ashen sorrow. A war for love turned into a war of curses. Troy became both a graveyard and a mirror, reflecting humanity's darkest instincts and brightest flames. As we look at the legacy of the Trojan War, we ask, why does this story still haunt us? What truth lies beneath the legend? For centuries, the Trojan War was thought to be just a myth, an epic poem, not a historical event. That changed in the 19th century. Heinrich Schliemann, a German businessman and amateur archaeologist, believed Homer's stories pointed to a real place. In 1870, he began digging at Hisarlik, a hill in modern-day Turkey. What he found stunned the world. Ruins of a vast, ancient city. Layer by layer, Schliemann uncovered 9 cities built on top of one another, each one older than the last. One of them, he claimed, was Troy. He found thick stone walls, signs of fire, and weapons, evidence of violent destruction. Could this be Homer's Troy? The city he called Troivai or Via matched many details from the Iliad. High walls, strategic location, and signs of siege. Later archaeologists confirmed that one of these cities was destroyed around 1200 BC, the same time the war was said to have occurred. Pottery, arrowheads, and skeletons told a story of a thriving city struck by sudden violence. But was this violence caused by a Greek invasion or something else entirely? Earthquake, internal conflict, sea raiders. There's no definitive proof of a Greek coalition storming the city. No Trojan horse, no Achilles, just ruins, burned and buried. Yet the archaeological Troy was clearly wealthy, fortified, and located on vital trade routes. That made it a natural target for conflict. Records from the Hittite Empire refer to a city called Wailusa, linguistically close to Ilias, Homer's name for Troy. They also mention a ruler named Alex, possibly linked to Paris, whose other name was Alexandros. In Greek, Hittite letters describe tension between Wailusa and Mycenaean Greeks, treaties, disputes, and even war. This suggests the Greeks and Trojans may have clashed not over love, but over trade, politics, and power. Archaeology doesn't confirm Homer's version, but it gives his tale a backbone, a foundation rooted in real people, real places. We find weapons, graves, and city walls. No gods or heroes, but humans who lived, fought, and died. Troy was not a fairy tale city. It was part of a complex, vibrant Bronze Age world that spanned from Greece to Egypt to Mesopotamia. And around 1200 BC, that world collapsed. Dozens of cities fell. Empires weakened, trade networks vanished. Still debated. The Trojan War may have been one spark among many, a symbol of the wider destruction sweeping the ancient world. Today, the ruins of Troy lie silent, stones and shadows where heroes once lived in song. But they whisper stories to those who listen. History and legend now exist side by side. Neither fully disproves the other. Instead, they shape one another. Archaeology gives flesh to the bones of myth, showing that behind every legend there may be a memory of truth. The more we uncover, the more we realize the past isn't lost. It's just waiting to be rediscovered. And sometimes, myth is the echo of something real. The story of Troy has shaped Western culture for millennia, influencing art, literature, and identity. Ancient Greeks saw Troy as a defining moment, a source of heroic ideals and tragic lessons. Roman poets, like Virgil, traced their origins to Trojan survivors, weaving Troy into Rome's founding myth. The Aeneid tells of Aeneas, a Trojan prince who escaped the city's fall and journeyed to Italy. Through this, Troy's legacy became intertwined with the birth of the Roman Empire, linking to great civilizations. The Trojan War inspired countless works from medieval epics to Renaissance paintings and modern novels. Its themes of love, betrayal, honor, and fate remain universal, resonating across cultures and centuries. Troy's story questions the cost of pride and the consequences of war, lessons still relevant today. Philosophers and historians debate the line between myth and history, showing how stories shape human understanding. Archaeologists and scholars continue to explore Troy and its world, blending science with imagination. The war's imagery, the Trojan horse, Achilles' heel, Helen's beauty have become symbols beyond the story itself. Troy represents both human grandeur and tragedy, reminding us of the fragile nature of civilization. In education, Troy is a gateway to learning about ancient Greece, mythology, and history. Its influence is seen in everything from literature curricula to popular films and games. Even political rhetoric sometimes invokes Troy, using its legend as metaphor for conflict and resolution. The endurance of the Trojan War story shows the power of narrative to preserve cultural memory. It connects us to a distant past, reminding us that humans have long sought meaning and struggle. Troy's fall marked not just the end of a city, but the beginning of a cultural legacy that spans millennia. Understanding Troy helps us grasp how history and myth intertwine to form the stories we tell about ourselves. The Trojan War continues to inspire curiosity, creativity, and debate around the world. It challenges us to look beyond the surface of stories and seek the truths hidden within. The Trojan War remains one of history's greatest mysteries, a blend of fact, fiction, and everything in between. We may never know exactly what happened on those ancient shores in 1200 BC, but through myth, archaeology, and scholarship, we gain glimpses into a world both strange and familiar. Troy teaches us about the complexities of human nature, our capacity for love, war, betrayal, and honor. It reminds us that history is often shaped by those who tell the story, mixing memory with imagination. The war's heroes and villains live on, not just as characters, but as symbols of timeless human struggles. The question remains, was it a war fought over a woman, or a war over power, pride, and survival? Maybe it was all of these, maybe it was none. Troy's story invites us to explore the past, question our assumptions, and embrace uncertainty. It challenges historians, poets, and dreamers alike to keep searching for meaning. The city that vanished overnight still echoes in our collective consciousness. Its walls may have crumbled, but its story stands, a testament to humanity's love for epic tales. And so, the legend of Troy continues to live, inspiring generations to come. What really happened may be lost, but the war's impact remains undeniable. In the end, Troy is more than a city. It is a symbol of our enduring fascination with history and myth. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time, legend, and discovery. May the story of Troy remind us always to look beyond the surface and seek the truth beneath.